What's going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. We're continuing our player-by-player look at everybody in this class, going to Mabrey Mettauer, the quarterback out of Woodlands, Texas. 6'5", 225 pounds, 4-star on Rivals, 4-star on ESPN. So at least a couple recruiting sites are on top of their game with this one. 247, 3-star on 3-star. I've talked about it a bunch. I don't understand how he's not a 4-star player. I'm not going to belabor the point anymore because y'all know my feelings on it if you watch this show. But to put it, kind of wrap a bow around it, if you're a 6'5" quarterback, you can run like he can. You have a cannon like he does. You improve the way he did. He threw one pick last year and he's playing at 6'8" football. I'm sorry. Like, what are you doing if you're not ranking him as a 4-star? Like, sorry, what? Your site should go away. I'm sorry. That's harsh. That's too harsh. There's room for all opinions on here, but just some of them are wrong on Mabrey. This is a 4-star quarterback. And it doesn't mean he'll pan out because there's plenty of 4- and 5-star quarterbacks that don't. I talked about this on the Lucas show. I love Xavier Lucas. It doesn't mean he's going to pan out. But we're going to get into the 3 things we like about him. And the reason he's a 4-star is because of those physical traits. Those are rare physical skills, rare physical size. And those things are 4-star type stuff, right? If you're 6'5", 6'6", you're 220, 230 pounds, you run like he can, you have an NFL arm. That's the first thing I talked to John Garcia Jr. about. He said, well, dude's got an NFL arm. Like, so the physical attributes, talking about the first thing I like about him, it's unbelievable. Like, he checks every box. There's a reason people have compared him to a guy like Trevor Lawrence. He just checks every physical box that you're looking for at a high school level. Now, again, that doesn't mean everything's going to come together. It doesn't mean he's a surefire ticket. There is no such thing as a surefire ticket, but it makes it easier because you can't teach 6'5", right? You can't put them in a strength and conditioning program and stretch them out. You can't teach 4.6 speed. You can get a little faster, but some of that's just God-given natural stuff. You can't teach great NFL arm. Like, there's quarterbacks in the NFL who don't have a great arm. The rest of this stuff you got to work on, but you can teach a lot of the rest of the stuff. He comes, preset with some things that just aren't teachable. So I think he's a stud. I had him as my number 1 player in this class, partially because of the physical tools, the upside, but also just because the quarterback can make a bigger impact than anyone else. That's not debatable. So he was my number 1 player in this class. The number 2 thing I like about him is growth. I mentioned it before. A lot of high school players, they're so physically good that they don't necessarily have to work on their craft as much. He threw 1 pick last year. He improved on the scouting report. We had him on the show. He talked about it, but you can see it. Like, the scouting report was a little inconsistent, a little inaccurate at times. He threw 1 pick last year, playing at the highest level of Texas high school football. If you see that type of growth combined with the physical skills, let's say that growth continues to happen and he starts stacking those years on top of each other, getting better and better. It's a franchise type quarterback. If it all comes together, again, I'm not trying to blow smoke here and say this is the guy who's going to win national championship at Wisconsin, but this is the prototype of the quarterback who could do that. Now, will it come together? We have to see, right? We have to see. He has to get weapons around him. Like, Wisconsin has to surround him with the right type of pieces. Longo has to coach him up. He has to stay healthy. He has to continue improving and grinding. Again, there's no guarantees in recruiting, but the spot you're starting at with Mabrey is pretty darn good. And the third thing I like about him is just the competition level. He's been tested. He's been tested about as much as you can be tested at the high school level. You're playing 6A football in Texas. You're playing in front of rabid crowds, big environments, like lots of pressure. I thought it was wild, man. He mentioned he was walking through his school after those first 2 weeks where their team struggled a little bit, playing some really, really good competition. And he had some kids like boom in school. Like, that's insane to me. That's the type of pressure and microscope he's already been under. So he's going to be better equipped than a lot of players to come in and handle the pressure of being a D1 quarterback. Like, from a mental standpoint, I think he already gets it a little bit. He already has that kind of poise and that understanding of I can't do everything that everyone else does because I have a spotlight on me. So you're talking about the physical skills, check. You're talking about the improvement internally, check. And then I think he has the intangibles. He's faced the competition. So I'm a big fan of it. Let's throw on the film as we always do. Let's watch some clips of Mabrey. Let's talk about it. Let's react. Let's just have fun together with it because this is fun film to watch. So again, Mabrey Mettauer, Class 6A high school football. And immediately I think you're going to see the mobility. Here he comes off. I think he hurdles this guy. Oh, man. I'm telling you right now, I don't think Phil Longo is going to want him hurdling people in the Big Ten, but he just moves really well. Like, this is an athletic player. You can see it on film. Again, coming from a different view here. And the guy doesn't even touch him. Like, he just brings unique athleticism to the field. I'm trying to think of a Badger quarterback that had that type of athleticism. McAvoy certainly did, but McAvoy couldn't make this throw, right? So, but McAvoy had that type of athleticism, but this is a true dual threat. Beginning takes it here, just runs over the guys, runs through contact, breaks 3 tackles. That's going to be an area in the Big Ten. He's going to have to be smart, right? You can't take too many shots from linebackers from Iowa, Ohio State, Penn State, et cetera, et cetera. But I think he gets that. And then you see mobility here in the pocket, keeps his head downfield, and now he's going to run for it. That's the other thing with Mabrey. He will look to make the big play, right? He's not always taking off. So many athletic quarterbacks, as soon as there's pressure, they take off and run. Mabrey will scan the field. He'll look right here, rolling out to the right, keeping his head downfield, trying to make the play for his receiver. A lot of high school quarterbacks at that level are just tucking in and running. They lack the awareness and they panic a little bit. They're like me playing Madden. As soon as I'm worried in the pocket, I'm taking off. I'm holding down the turbo button. That's not Mabrey. Like, he will run. I think there are times he could probably stay in the pocket a little bit more, but he's, again, here, he's looking downfield. He's trying to make the play. It's unique about him. And now he's going to take off and run a guy over. Again, not as a bit of a late hit right there. Again, not necessarily contact you want him to absorb at the college level, but he's physical enough to do it. And in the big moments, right in the 3rd and 1, down by the goal line, you're playing Iowa, you need a touchdown. He has the ability to run somebody over. And that's pretty impressive. Like, that's, again, not something that Wisconsin has had a lot of. But the arm's there as well. He's got a great arm. He can really rip it. Here you go, step back, 1-2, wide open there. But he has the ability to really step back, hit that back foot, and let it go. Such a good prospect, man. This is a fun one. Definitely a big get to this recruiting class. Again, quick release there, quick read. He's got some dudes at the outside too. We've talked about that as well. Hopefully we get 1 or 2 of those guys. Watch a couple more clips here. Stands in the pocket, takes the hit, delivers a deep ball. That's another thing you watch this film. There's toughness to his game. Like, he'll stand in the pocket, he'll take a hit, he'll shrug guys off. He really does have a lot of that physical, again, that kind of just alpha in a quarterback. Throwing a fade here to the end zone, great touch. He can do it all. Now, it has to come together. This is what we've always talked about. It has to come together, but he has the ability to do it all. We're going to wrap it up there, kick it over to Brian Smith, John Garcia Jr., a couple people just talking about his game, getting a different look at it, looking at it from maybe a scout's perspective at times. So we're going to come next with that, but this was our Mabrey Mettauer breakdown. Again, my prospect number 1 in this class because of the all-around ability and because of the position. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the 5-star recruiting site. It's the number 1 place to find all of your talent. We talk about recruiting a lot on this site. LinkedIn does that on the professional side. They find the right people for your team faster, more efficiently. And if you're doing things faster, more efficiently, what are you doing, business people? You're saving money, right? That's what LinkedIn is here to do for all of us. Make our lives easier, make your hiring managers' jobs easier. They find the right people faster, right? They don't let the people have no business they have screening tools and questions to keep the people have no business coming into your job interview away from your desk, away from your time, away from your calendar. They are incredible. It's something I use personally to continue to expand my network. It's something my company uses to hire quicker and more professionally. Right now, LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. They are the 5-star recruiting and hiring site. Today's episode is also brought to you by our great friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel's awesome. Everything you want in a sports book, right? You want teasers? You got teasers. You want parlays? You got parlays. More parlays than you could parlay. You want futures, spreads? It's all there with every sport you can imagine and think of. FanDuel is where I go to do all of my betting because it's easy. It's fast. The payouts are simple. How many of us have won one of those kind of weird betting sites and you can't figure out how to get your money? FanDuel makes that easy. You get your money quickly. It's incredibly fun. I bet on all my teams. Y'all know it. Niners, Suns, Braves. Some work better than others, but I have fun with it, and FanDuel allows me to enjoy that aspect of it easier and simpler and quicker and get those payouts when I do win. It is the fastest, easiest site to use, and it is the official sports betting partner of the NFL. Right now, there's a great offer. Right now, new customers with a winning $5 moneyline bet get a $150 bonus bet. That's a winning $5 moneyline bet. You get a $150 bonus bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedoncollege. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the NFL.
The Metoyer kid is interesting. There's not a ton of senior film, but there was 2 things that I noticed. Number 1, he has a play up where he faked an RPO and just took off. He's faster than I thought he was. I mean, he's humongous. Yeah. He's 230, I'm guessing. something like that. And he looks like he's 25 years old. He looks like Tarzan. He's humongous. And he can run pretty good. The arm is still there. I mean, like he can flick his wrist and throw it 40 yards, no problem. But there's not a ton of his senior film yet. I'm curious to see a little bit more because he's playing in Houston. There's no hiding down there. Every week you're going to get somebody that's got to keep going to college, period. So it's a lot like Miami, especially DB and receiver. It's out the yin yang. So he's going to be going against guys. Those are the ones off the top of my head I can think of that I've seen recently.
Yeah, I did kind of a quick update stats-wise on Metoyer. His first 2 games of the year, he's playing at the 6A level. He's playing at the highest level in Texas. And his first 2 games were against 2 of the best teams in that division in Texas football.
I'm surprised.
And, yeah, he didn't do great in those games, but he's on a team that doesn't have that level of necessarily talent. Whereas if
he's more of a system program, they always have been.
Where if he's playing in Wisconsin, like his numbers would be through the roof. Like it wouldn't be a good level of competition.
It's not the same deal there.
One thing I want to jump right into is when Mabrey Mettauer, whose pronunciation I think I'm starting to get, committed to the Badgers. We talked a lot about, I went back and listened to what we talked about, right? We talked about how big it is to get the quarterback early. We talked about, oh my goodness, Phil Longo and, Luke Fickell, they're just crushing this. And we did talk about Metoyer's game, but I wanted to go back and talk more specifically about his upside because we covered a lot the first time we talked about him. What do you see in the 6'5", 220-pound kid out of Texas? What is his upside, his ceiling? Where are you at right now with Metoyer?
Yeah, I really like him. This is a guy who I think I met as a freshman, his the spring after his freshman year out on the Elite 11 circuit. And, this young, everyone was calling him Trevor Lawrence because of the hair, right? Like, hey, Trevor Lawrence 2.0. And I'm watching this freshman sling and I'm like, this is a freshman, so he's always had this great frame and physical tools, but he had just played, a few snaps basically the season prior. So it was always about, hey, I know the physical foundation's here. What is it going to look like, though, when you're that guy on Friday nights at the Woodlands in Texas, in the Houston area against that type of competition? And his sophomore season was great. 66% completion percentage. The production was good, a bunch of rushing touchdowns. And then he upped it as a junior in more games, more efficient as a passer and a runner. So it's kind of all coming together for Mabrey because he's got such a physical foundation, such a cannon on his right arm that it's almost about everything else. Can you take something off of these fastballs? Can you be more efficient as a runner? What is the RPO decision-making game looking like? So there's just not a lot of recruits that from their freshman season, we're talking about all the non-physical. It's always about, he's getting bigger and stronger and faster and all these things. All of those boxes have long been checked for this Badger commitment. It's always been about everything else. And what I like about his upside is that he is becoming more efficient every single time he gets out there on the field, because I think when you get into these Phil Longo, these spread offensive systems, everybody's sort of productive, right? So the numbers could kind of blur you a little bit, but are you becoming more efficient in your decision-making and that production simultaneously? And that answer is a resounding yes from Metoyer. And I think that is a heck of a sign going into, and he's still got a year left, right? Going into his senior season of football. So the arm strength is still there. The running ability is absolutely there. The size is never going to go away. But in the margins, he's now taking those steps that everybody's been wanting him to take. And I think there's something to be said for that as well, because when you're called Trevor Lawrence 2.0, when people first see you, that's kind of a lot of pressure. And you're not quarterbacking in the middle of nowhere. No disrespect to Cole LaCrue. You're in Houston. This is against big time competition every single Friday night with a heck of a microscope on every pass you make. So to kind of have lived up to it in this 2-year sample, I think says a lot about the kid in between the ears. So we get into the evaluation and it's a lot about those things. And that's where I like his upside, because if he's already started to check those unanswered boxes, I do think that it's a great sign going forward, especially when you talk about assimilating into a system like Longo's that's going to put so much on that QB1 at a high level. So I think he's kind of right where you want him to be at this stage. I certainly still think there's room to improve mechanically. I think, he's got this cannon. Take something off of it, go off speed a little bit. Can you be more efficient on the run as a passer, as opposed to maybe, utilizing that great frame and speed to pick up yardage in chunks, maybe take less hits, all the things that you want to see at a high level. I think that's the next step for Metoyer to take. And I kind of think he will.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned take less hits. You can see some punishment on film that you
Yeah.
definitely don't want your quarterback taking. That leads into a decision-making process. There's quarterbacks all the way through the NFL that never figure that out, running quarterbacks whose
Yeah,
career
26 rushing touchdowns. So yeah, he's not waltzing in for a lot of those. Yeah.
No, he lowers the shoulder more, which is, listen, it's a dual-edged sword, right? You like seeing physicality, toughness, leadership, the get the yard at all cost mentality. I think that permeates to the rest of the team from a quarterback, but you also need your shoulder to throw the ball. Right?
Yes, that thing. Yes, you do need that to get the ball down the field again, especially in that type of offense that's going to demand so much. Even just think of a simple RPO where you're going to throw the football over the middle. Think of all the action that your shoulder's going through, right? You're carrying out a fake to a running back while a defensive end is crashing in on you, and simultaneously you're reading the second and third level of the defense to see if your primary receiver can get open in the hole. And if he does, you're probably pulling the ball out and throwing it from a lower arm angle than convention would suggest. And that's all on your shoulder, all of it, the action, the pull, and the throw. And that's just, a 7-yard gain on first down that nobody cares about. So, over time, you need to protect that as much as possible, even if you are this big physical specimen, because like you said, it is a double-edged sword. You could fall off a cliff, essentially, if you utilize that. I mean, look at Cam Newton in the NFL. I think Josh Allen's starting to see a little bit of that, where they're like, hey, let's slow down a little bit and throw the ball to these great receivers. There's kind of a line for every one of those guys, and I think that's important for him to keep in mind, even though he's able to do so in dominant fashion in high school. It adds up and kind of catches up to everybody.
Yeah, and RG3 is another poster child for some of that.
Oh, yeah. Goodness.
And then there's a ton of college quarterbacks that you can go back to and look at. I want to talk here. One of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation with you specifically about kind of the upside, the ceiling here, is everything we've talked about, the frame, the athletic ability, the big arm, doing it in a place with a lot of visibility. 247 as a high 3-star quarterback. The composite's right around 4-star when you average in 0-3 rivals. Very, very good prospect. None of this is meant to say, that he needs to be much higher. But when it feels like there's a disconnect somewhere for a fan looking at, or even someone watching the film, you see the highlight clips, you see the speed, the size, the league he's doing it in, the arm strength. It feels like the ranking should be higher for a kid like that out of Texas. And where are we missing?
I think, first of all, I do think there's time for that. This is the most critical offseason for quarterback evaluations, junior year going into senior season. So there's still a lot in front of him. But, I do understand maybe that curiosity from the Badger fan base. And I think it's those things in the margins, particularly in a camp setting, let's say, which, again, it's not the be-all, end-all and not the most important thing. But it's the time where you get the most sort of intimacy with watching a quarterback operate. And if you're at an Elite 11 regional, let's say, you're going to watch him make, 80 throws from all these platforms and situations designed to make you look uncomfortable. And when you're known for arm strength, that can get away from you as events like that wear on. So the ball is not as tight. The mechanics start to wane a little bit. So as much high-end positivity as you get, there's maybe a lack of consistency that comes behind it because you're so big and so physical and so strong, honestly, with that right arm. So I do think it's a little bit of a lack of consistency in those settings, just as much as it is wanting to see a little bit more off speed and a little bit more kind of the complete route tree as opposed to chucking it down the field or running that you want to see from an evaluation standpoint. It's nitpicky, but that's the business, especially at that position, right? In this day and age, it's not like the best quarterbacks aren't the ones that throw it 80 yards. They're the ones who can throw it 12 and on time. That's really the next step and the next ask for Mabrey. And I think, again, he's got everything in front of him to be able to start to check those nitpicky boxes, but he's still got to go out there and do it. I do think he's got the mentality to take that type of evaluation or criticism and work with it in stride without kind of being bitter and focused on the wrong things. And that's important as well.
Speaking of recruiting out of state, not in your area, but heading down to Texas for Wisconsin, the quarterback in 2024, the verbal commit, Mabrey Mettauer. I wanted to get your take on Metoyer, 6'5", good athletic ability, good arm. high 3-star player. His ranking actually went down a little bit if you look at the composite. I know Badger fans had a little consternation there. What are your thoughts? We're all always hyper focused on our kids' recruiting rankings, right? That's just how fandom works.
It's true.
What are your thoughts on Metoyer? I know you've met him in person. You've seen the film. Where are you at on his game?
He is one of the most difficult players of the last several years to give a quote unquote final grade on. And here's why. Number one, it's quarterback, which is above the shoulders. If you follow the game, you know the deal. Some of the best quarterbacks ever weren't the most gifted. When I met him and he was a freshman, somebody said, that's him over there. And I looked at him, and I won't repeat what I said to them when they told me that, because I thought they were just lying to my face. He looked like he was 20 years old when he was 14 or 15. He was humongous. And he's gotten stronger, and he looks like a 25-year-old now. Like he is just completely filled out, and his arm strength is asinine. It's just insane. He has an NFL arm right now, flat out. Now it's all the stuff about reading defenses, all the stuff I don't really get to see in the back room. But he can move a hell of a lot better than people think. His ability to escape the pocket, he'll run over somebody. He jumped over somebody in his junior year, and he's playing in Houston. For those of you that don't know where the Woodlands is, it's north suburbs of Houston, elite competition. So that's not in question. He's playing against dudes every year. And in the 7-on-7 circuit, he plays with a big-time program as well. He's as seasoned as it gets. The only question now, can he learn the little nuances, when to take something off a pass? He actually throws it too hard sometimes. Because if he does that, he could be the first pick in the draft. The arm strength, again, is just absolutely insane. And it's quite honestly been that way for a couple of years. He was physically ready when he was a sophomore in terms of arm strength and size.
So, and that brings up a question that I've heard a couple times from people reaching out to me, trying to get a little more clarity on it if possible. We've talked about the arm strength, and you just reinforced that, and even beyond what we've said. He's got the size, right? He's a 6'5", 6'4" kid with frame and build. He can move pretty well. High-level competition in an area with a lot of visibility.
Sure.
Why is he a 3-star? Again, I don't mean to hyper-focus on that, but it feels like there's something that is missing there that isn't just the fine-tuning of the throwing, because that's really hard, in my opinion, to evaluate at times.
I think people are just curious to see if he can develop the things I was talking about. They want to see the little things with the underneath throws and all that. Sometimes, at 7-on-7 tournaments, for people that don't know, I'll be 5 feet behind him, literally. So I see what he sees and all that. Sometimes I worry about if the kid's going to get killed or not because he throws it that hard on a 10-yard over route or whatever. He needs to take something off. And sometimes people just worry that he's just a thrower and not a passer. That's a term you'll hear. Back offices of a college football program, etc. And he's learning. Being a quarterback, to put it in perspective, is something that you never stop growing. Even Tom Brady, who's arguably the greatest player ever, I guarantee you he learned something during his last season with the Buccaneers. It is freaking hard to play quarterback. This kid's 17. So again, if I had to rank him, if 5 is the highest, that would be the ceiling for him. Right now, I have him 3.5 to 4. I haven't seen him in the last couple months, but he could quickly go. If he just figures out the underneath stuff, he's immediately a 4 to 4.5 star player, because you don't have to worry about the mid game and down the field. That we're good. So he just has to understand the conceptual stuff of when to take things and just, take the 5-yard pass, don't force the ball down the field, and just give his guy a catchable ball, and he's good.
One of the things I think is really interesting for people who watch players in person, and this is where I'm really curious to get your perspective. We can watch film, but we don't see body language. We don't see how he interacts with people around him. Because I know you've met him, I know you've seen him in person. What is he like in person from the charisma, body language, interactions with teammates? From a coaching standpoint, how does he take coaching?
He's a very competitive kid. He'll get on somebody if they drop a ball or something like that, but he's not some jerk either. He's kind of middle of the road with that. And he's a guy that if he throws the perfect ball isn't going to be an idiot either. A lot of 7-on-7 coaches kind of let their guys go overboard. He's not that way. And I also think Metoyer is one of those kids that will be someone you want to play with because he's a fun guy. He's off the record and just kind of joking around with him on the sidelines. He's cool as heck. That makes it a lot easier to play with him, and he'll fit in at Wisconsin. That's not a fan base that's crazy in the sense of just going nuts like some of the other fans are, how they act and stuff. I respect Wisconsin fans a lot more than I do some other fan bases, but they are really into Badgers football. he'll be beloved in that regard. They won't have any problem. He'll sign autographs. He's a guy that'll be good with his teammates, coaches. He won't have any problems.
That's great to hear. And I wanted to also ask you, just again, zooming out from a national perspective, how big of a get is Metoyer for the Badgers? Luke Fickell's first full recruiting cycle, going out of state to a powerhouse, getting that quarterback. How big is that for the Badgers?
The Woodlands is one of those programs that if you recruit Houston, whatever school you are, if you go through Houston, the chances are extremely high you're going to have your coach go to the Woodlands. So that's check mark number one. Houston, a couple of years ago, to put it in perspective, was the number 2 city in America for producing players that like made it to the Super Bowl. It matters. So that's good news. Second, Texas is just loaded with a position that the Badgers have struggled with, is receiver, and he's a quarterback. I mean, think about Texas. Just it's unbelievable the number of quarterbacks and receivers that come out of that state. So when they got him, it caught my attention. I don't pay much attention to Wisconsin's recruiting, but when Luke got him, I'm like, okay, things are different. Now, obviously, the coordinator they just pulled from North Carolina, I get it. That offense, if you're a quarterback and you're not attracted to it, I'm a little concerned. So I'm not necessarily shocked. But when was the last time the Badgers got a kid from South Texas? You know, that was on that level. I don't remember it. So I think it's going to have a pull in terms of people. If I noticed it, so did other recruits.
Talk to Mabrey. What did he come across as a quarterback? Because so many people talk about quarterbacks has to be the leader, the intangible side. What was that like, the conversation?
Oh, my conversation with Mabrey was awesome. Just the professionalism already, because I do a lot of interviews. I do them weekly. I get 4 to 5 athletes usually a week on my podcast. And he showed up on time, which is a huge deal. He was actually early, because you will be surprised. I get a ton of no-shows or just people that don't respond. So his professionalism was fantastic. That was just starting off the bat. But he was so great in his interview. He was not only smart on the field, he's smart off the field too. And he just held himself in such a professional manner. He was talking about his O-line, how they helped him out, and his weapons, his receivers, his backs. He actually called them his dogs. So I thought that was awesome. But he is so humble, and then he's so confident in himself. I think that's the biggest thing in a quarterback. You want someone that's confident and it's going to command the field and really command your offense and take control of it. And that's what he did. He was really focusing on telling his receivers, his backs, his O-line that you got to focus on your job, because if you focus on your job, we'll all come together and mesh together.
Mabrey and I went there. Marissa didn't come. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Gave us the red carpet treatment. And again, I loved it. I thought it was great. And the atmosphere was great. We were playing Washington State, unfortunately. And it was like we had control of that game. And it was just like watching just how it went. I was just, it felt like we were playing down to them, and it was just it was really a strange feeling, because we had them by the throat, and it was kind of frustrating. And then of course we were behind the opposing team's bench, and man, were they talking mad trash. And I was just like, you know, we're visitors, but if we, you know, it was pretty tough to witness. I mean, it was the students were great. A lot of them knew Mabrey. You know, showed him a great time just while we were walking on the field. And then, you know, we had left with a great taste in our mouth. And then we were still considering Wisconsin. But Phil Longo was putting on the, you know, the pressure, so to speak, just by being such a great recruiter and a genuine, honest guy from North Carolina. And Mac Brown, you can see why he had the recruiting classes he had, because he's just photographic memory, super personable. Both of them were. And so we were really, you know, we had pretty much decided to go to North Carolina. And then, you know, then there was word. Well, the big news was Fickell going to Wisconsin, which I thought was a great choice. And the first thing I told Mabrey was, you know, that they're going to do great, because now they got a guy in there that's taking a group of 5 team, put them in the playoffs and into an area where they're just kind of waiting to win, you know, like win again, so to speak. And like, but not just get 8 or 9 or 10 wins, but win championships. And then we heard Longo was leaving. We're like, where's he going? And it was like Coastal Carolina, the head coach. He's going to go to this other school, that other school. And we're like, kind of like in not really knowing what we're going to do. And then he went to Wisconsin. And I personally thought, I was like, wow, how crazy was that? We went to Wisconsin, really liked it. And now Longo's there with Fickell, who actually had offered Mabrey at Cincinnati. Mabrey had an offer to Cincinnati as well and didn't consider it really because of where it is, but liked Coach Fickell, liked Coach Dom. And the rest is history, really. I mean, it was like, what are we waiting for? I mean, so what we did with McCade was, okay, here's your choices. What are your top three? Pros and cons of each. For us, it was basically North Carolina, Wisconsin. I mean, what are we waiting on? Because we were going to wait on end of spring. We're going to wait till the summer, whatever. And it was just like, I'm not saying I'm the voice of reason, but sometimes it's just like there's no real reason to wait. And so we sat down early December and pros and cons of each. And really the only con that we could come up with Wisconsin was, okay, it's a 2-hour flight to North Carolina versus 4 hours of traveling to Madison. I mean, you know, both great public universities, top 10 for sure. Get a great education. Fan base is pretty close as far as just how excited they are about the program. But obviously Wisconsin, big on a much bigger scale, more resources. And to be honest with you, just better support on the team as far as players and talent. And, you know, that's pretty much how we made our decision. And, you know, Longo, when he latches onto you, he becomes, you know, like a member of the family too. And it's, he's genuine, he's honest. And like everybody talks about, he really is that type of recruiter.